Well, good afternoon, everyone, and kind of welcome. I'm thrilled to be here from my Canada Post perspective on the small business marketing team, bringing to you really an opportunity to kind of share some insights on how you can really get your marketing message back in market and really prepare yourself for the new business as usual. We know, and I think it's a given that small businesses have been severely impacted by COVID-19, and the retail landscape has changed dramatically. And so really we want to help prepare you for what comes next. And how do you get the tools and the resources that you need to really make sure that you're well equipped and prepared for this next phase. So really, what we want to do is make sure that, and understandably over the past few months, your focus would have been, stick handling all of the things you would have had to adapt from, transitioning online or changing your business model or what have you. And really, marketing would likely have come to gone to the back burner in terms of a priority. But I think as across the country things are reopening and you're getting yourself back in market to whatever extent, in terms of where you were over the past few months, it's critical now to really equip yourself with how you get your business back in market. And so today we really want to talk about how you create renewed brand awareness, adapt your message for the current landscape and how you've had to change yourself, and also finding the right customers for your business and interacting with your loyal customer base. So we're hoping that we can just dive right in and give you kind of a good groundwork to get things going. So over the past 4 months or so, we know you've had to adapt your business model and you've had to evolve who you are as a business. And so the kind of interesting juxtaposition of this all is that you really have an opportunity to leverage those elements that you've had no choice but to quickly transition and shift your business to, but really incorporate that in terms of who you are and what your business represents and offers to the marketplace. So we encourage you to really take some of those insights and share your story that you've experienced throughout the course of the pandemic to date. So it could be as simple as, telling the market how you've had to either introduce social distancing practices, how you've adapted, that interaction with customers between your employees, or set up your structure to allow for curbside pickup. These are things that you should really keep in mind and then look to share. I think now more than ever, consumers are looking for open and honest communication, and they're looking for a story that they can relate to and that will resonate with them. So kind of incorporating and weaving in some of these elements of what you've actually experienced and how that's impacted your business really can go a long way in enhancing your current brand presence and really taking it that one step forward. It'll mean that your current customers will really kind of like to hear from you and like to hear what's been happening and what you've been experiencing. But it also gives you an opportunity to expose yourself to potential customers who may come across you and now may all of a sudden, given their own circumstances having changed, will relate to that message and be able to, subsequently generate new business or new interest into your business. Who you've kind of become in this semi-post-COVID reality is really obviously going to continue to evolve as things continue to kind of pace forward, and no one really knows what that's going to look like. But I think the best way to make yourself kind of nimble and kind of continue those measures that you've had no choice but to do over the last 4 months is apply that same level of thinking to your marketing efforts. And so we'll go a little deeper into how you can actually do this from an actual brand and message perspective, and how that will subsequently impact who you find and relate to as a potential customer. And I think the most important thing, and really just to kind of have top of mind, even probably more so than it already is how do you keep your customers informed? So regardless of the state that your business has been in, undoubtedly you've been interacting with them in some shape or form. So now at this kind of junction point where we're at, it's really a great opportunity for you to take some of those pieces of information and bring them forward and kind of continue that conversation. So there's three key ways that you can do this. It's really about focusing on your website, leveraging social media and how you use social media to your advantage, and then communicating some of your in-store practices. So if we start with your website, if you weren't e-commerce enabled before, I think in some shape or form, every small business has had to adapt and become somewhat e-commerce enabled. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you have a full-fledged operating store from an online perspective, but it could just mean that you have a shoppable landing page that allows people to select and offer them certain products of your inventory. And so you want to make sure that on your site, you're clearly identifying your products, clearly identifying how they can access them. And really, it becomes a good opportunity right now, given the current state is kind of still in flux, to really find the right way and a simple way for you to communicate and respond to customer inquiries. So, depending on the level of sophistication of your site or the needs of your business, introducing something like a chatbot or live chat into your experience really gives that customer service level to another level when you're interacting with your customers. And it really becomes not only a good investment from how you interact with them, but also from a time perspective on your end as well. And another kind of key thing that really relates into, being reachable and having businesses that don't know you kind of find out about you is making sure you have good search engine optimization practices. So the more time you spend kind of refining those characteristics, the better it's going to be for the right people to find you. So I think we're all in the same boat where everyone's spending more time at home than they typically would, and subsequently more time likely online. So when people are looking for certain products or services, you want to make sure that you're top of mind and that your business is kind of easily found and they can attribute certain characteristics that they're looking for to it. And then if we talk about social media for a second, this really gives you an opportunity to engage. And so, the more you can engage with your audience, the more likely you are to kind of resonate in their minds, be memorable, have them kind of think of you and come back to you when they're looking for certain products, and really using that to your advantage. So shareable pieces of content that you can help to get your message out there, whether that's, taking how your brand's evolved. And so, informing your base or potential customers about how you've had to adapt, or sharing insights about your product. So an online tutorial on YouTube where you can actually walk them through the steps of how to use something to its fullest potential, or something that's just a quick clip on Instagram. These are kind of little pieces of information and nuggets that you can pull out that really will resonate with people. If they see it in multiple spots, which we'll talk about in a moment, they're more likely to kind of have something trigger in their mind about your business. And this really enables you another medium to share your story, share what's happening, pass along updates around your current state, and really engage and strengthen the community of followers that your business has. And lastly, communicating in-store practices. So I think the best businesses that we've all probably come across in these times are those that are really open and upfront around what they've been doing. So preparing yourself is obviously hugely important, and your employees for what that space and all the safety measures that you're going to have in place as you're continuing this reopening process, or kind of adapting if you have still been open. And it's really about telling your customers about what you've done, so that at that moment when you start recommunicating with them and you start marketing your business again, that becomes integrated and inherent in terms of the message that you communicate to them. You want to make sure that they feel comfortable and know what they're walking into when they get there. And so really, whether you're driving traffic to your store or managing it for your website, you really want to make sure that there's that level of information that's passed on to the customer to really make sure that that line of communication is wide open. And obviously, it's not a thing that you can do in kind of one fell swoop. It's something that you can chip away at and really kind of put the pieces together. And these really become the building blocks of how you will get to a stronger and more effective marketing campaign and really slowly use these tools to reintroduce your business to the market. And so, where it kind of goes from here is how do you separate yourself from your competition? So right now, everyone's kind of, in the same boat and they're trying to figure themselves out and they're trying to figure out how they fit into this new landscape. And if you think about the businesses that leave a lasting impression in your mind, it really relates back to their marketing efforts and the way that they're positioned. So you have to kind of think about what that means for you. So how do you define yourself as a business? What are some of those key characteristics that your customers, that your customers relate to today, or that you think potential customers will relate to given the current state? And so when you're building out your campaign, it really begins with who you are as a business and what you offer. And working that message into your positioning and your marketing campaigns really allows that to come through and to be able to be something that individuals instantly relate to and that they remember. So you want to make sure that your brand is based on memorable messaging. You want to ensure that you've described clearly what your value proposition is and make sure that anyone who is going to potentially purchase something from you knows exactly what they're getting from the investment that they're going to make. And we're going to talk in a bit about who your ideal customer is and how you go about targeting them and finding more individuals like them. But it's really important to make sure that all of this is rooted in serving that purpose of kind of reaching that customer that you know is most likely to purchase from you. And then once you have them, what helps you keep them is a great customer experience. So at this point, and really at any point in time, having a customer experience that leaves the customer feeling that it was positive and pleasurable and something that they would want to go back to and also recommend to others is something that becomes critical and synonymous with who you are as a business. And lastly, and most importantly, is to be authentic. I think the businesses that I personally respond the most to, and I am inclined to kind of go out of my way to keep supporting, are those who are really upfront with their business and what they do and why they do it. And then the quality of their product kind of just amplifies that even further. And all of those things together really make for the opportunity for you to keep your customers and subsequently grow them while you're acquiring new individuals. So at the end of the day, when you're building your brand, it's really about, who are you going to say this to? What are you going to say to them? And what venue and what medium are you going to use to communicate with them? And what you say is really just as important as the medium, and if not more important. And so up until now, you've likely had fundamental core foundational messaging that you incorporate within your marketing programs and your communications, whether that be through digital, on your site, through direct mail, or whatever channels you're using to promote your business. But now you really have a chance to merge those two things together. The piece of your brand that has evolved and changed and really that new version of your business coupled with the core fundamentals of your value proposition that people would be either used to or interested by. And so sharing more with your customers is really critical. You don't want to, obviously, and I think none of us want to be inundated with marketing messages from one business, but it's really about finding the right things to communicate to them and the right time to do so. And so this really also goes back to what we were saying about telling them your story of what you've experienced over the past few months. It goes well beyond the product messaging, and having a tidbit of information that goes along with a product piece is really just kind of helps to widen your reach and widen your ability to connect with a potential shopper or one of your existing customers. And so really you take that kind of opportunity to merge those stories together, and then it gives you a chance to weave in other pieces that might be important to your business. So if it makes sense and if it's relevant to your brand and to your business offering and what you've already established yourself as, if there are things that are important to you from a social issue perspective, or you're participating in charitable activities, or you're supporting COVID measures as people are trying to kind of get back on their feet, you want to be able to kind of make that part of what you share. uh, People are looking for, and we know that they relate to um, businesses who kind of have a bigger purpose and are relating to that idea of seeing what you're participating in or supporting or advocating or sharing content on, because it makes sense based on who your business is. And it's not a matter of packing that on to say people think it's important, so let's do it. It's really if it makes sense for you, for what you do. It's just another way of sharing information about your business that really makes it more personal and not just transaction oriented. And really what this helps you do is, and it does, is encourage engagement. And so at the end of the day, when you're trying to make your brand relevant and also people to become aware of it, you want to be able to have ways that that happens automatically and naturally in the process. And as soon as that kind of goes into a rhythm of how you incorporate it in your messaging and through your communications, and it hopefully and subsequently will drive sales and help you build that base of customers and retain your customers that you have right now. Because I think the important thing is, and what kind of sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, is that your current customers will recognize what they hear because they'll feel like it's true to the business that they've been interacting with for however long. But then it goes back to what we said about potential customers. They may hear something and come across you and find you, and they may not have been inclined to do so before. So figuring out the right mix of product versus that new adapted brand and the practices you've put in place, finding that right mix of information and not overwhelming them, and kind of sharing it in one take is really your ideal way of setting yourself up to develop a really effective marketing campaign. Because then once you have the message laid down, you then really get to overlay the offer and the creative and any of those pieces that become critical to the potential promotional element of it. But you started with a good layer of content and copy that will resonate with individuals. And so as you kind of are building this into a campaign, it really then blends to, well, what do you need to do and what do you need to consider as you're building an effective marketing campaign? So it really comes down to some, really key three things: the right message to the right people at the right time. And seems, straightforward, and we know it's never really as easy as it sounds, but incorporating these four pieces into a marketing campaign, regardless of the medium that you're using, can really help you kind of work through a process that makes sure that you've accounted for things that are going to be not only important to the recipient, but also important to you to make sure that you know but the investment that you're making in the marketing campaign is worthwhile, and you'll know how to tinker and adjust, when you approach the next time. So a unified message is really around starting again, not only with that fundamental message that we just talked about, but also a message that can be transitioned and leveraged across mediums. So these become things like that would never change: your brand, your market positioning, your value proposition, elements that regardless of where you're talking about your business, you're going to talk about it in the same way. And the parts that might change come down the line when we talk about the timing and the offer. And so when you think about timing, it's really about not when was the right time to do a campaign, but also when's the right time to use a certain medium. So we'll talk about building an integrated marketing campaign, but for all intents and purposes, this simple way of thinking about timing is, is there seasonality that you need to take into consideration for your business? Is there a certain sale that you want to highlight? Or are you just communicating in the current state? You're communicating that you're backed for business and you're open, and these are the parameters that you're operational, or how customers can find you. And it really becomes timing and working backwards from that key milestone that you build into the steps as you're going through the development of your campaign. And then it's about the offer. So what offer is going to draw interest to your existing customer base or to potential customers? And they might be different. They might be different by audience and recipient of that message, and they might also be different based on the medium that you're using. So if you're going through social media, an offer that you put out to that following might be different than, say, what you do in a direct mail postcard campaign that's going to be received at people's homes. And so as you're thinking through the actual campaign, you want to make sure that you're not just broadly indicating kind of the same thing across the board, because depending on where that message is going to land, something else might be better for that specific group of people. And then lastly, this is what becomes critical for you, is your campaign measurable? So have you put practices in place within the campaign parameters to ensure that you're able to track and understand if it works? So is it a promo code for them to use online? Is it a coupon that they have to bring in store? So these become ways that you can track against how many communication pieces you actually distributed versus the response that you get, and these will become your key learnings and your building blocks for your future campaigns. And so if you actually kind of take a step back and build out these kind of 4 steps, you really establish a way of thinking through your campaign that will serve you to be able to kind of refer back to it if it works, or adjust and modify if one of these pieces didn't work. And so you really have to think about what approach is right for your business, what makes sense, and that goes the same for channels. So it's what channels become effective for you is also based on your interaction points, what your business offers, and what makes sense in terms of those relating to those 2 pieces. It's not going to be the same for everyone, but this is where testing becomes critical depending on what you've done before and whether you've seen success with it or not. And where it kind of all files in is about into building an integrated campaign. So simply said, an integrated campaign is really about coordinating when marketing messages go out through different mediums and leveraging each medium to its fullest potential. And so if we think through kind of the process of doing this as it relates back to those kind of 4 fundamental elements of developing an effective campaign, the piece where this really comes into play is determining, like we said, the offer and the timing. And so how do you make sure that you kind of plan and account for when is the right time to drive people to your website, communicate via social media or digital display ads versus integrating direct mail into that campaign where it makes sense. And so right now, we know that businesses have heavily been using social media and digital platforms to communicate to their customers or to promote and advertise their businesses. But I think, at the same time, we've all also been had overconsumption of digital forms of media and anything that's related to kind of buying. And so it really is a great time for you to integrate direct mail into those digital campaigns. So we don't believe that one is better than the other. We know that both work really well when used properly together. So if you're reopening and you communicate that online and you share that through either an email communication or through digital display, complementing that with a direct mail campaign in that same, using those same targeting parameters really helps amplify your message. And so we'll talk about targeting in a second, but this really is how you learn and figure out which pieces work best for you and when's the right time to do it, and the best way to leverage the different mediums to your advantage, really. And so when you think about building that campaign, you actually layer in the thinking of where and how those channels are going to be used. So some of the best practices when you're building out an integrated campaign are really about, the fundamentals that we've actually already a little bit covered, telling a consistent story across those channels. So making sure that if someone reads about you online or sees you on Instagram or gets a postcard in their mailbox, when your business is described and talked about, it's talked about in the same way. And the best way to also do that is also from a creative perspective. You want to make sure that from an online perspective and a physical perspective, whether that's in the mail or in your store, that you're making a consistent experience for your customers so that regardless of the touch points and the interactions that they're having with you, something is always resonating, and that is what they're going to remember in the long run. And so really at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you've built creative and personalized experiences regardless of the channel that you're using. And then you really want to make sure that you are targeting the right individuals based on those mediums. So you want to make sure that you are leveraging your insights about your customers, know where they are reading about you, hearing about you, or going, going and interacting with you, and taking that into account when you build out and plan your program. And so the right sequence of events really comes down to what your objectives are. So if your intent is to drive people back to your store, then what is the best way to do that? Are there elements that can be done to, through an existing list that you're able to communicate via email? Or is there also an opportunity to get new businesses into your store by using a radius of, say, 2 kilometers around your physical location, using our direct mail services to kind of drive traffic that's from your local community and from your neighborhood, which really gives you the opportunity to tap into individuals who may be interested but may just not know about you just yet. So timing really becomes a critical element across all of this because you want to make sure that the cadence of activities and tactics that you're going to use make sense and that you're able to actually incorporate them in a logical fashion as you're going out to your customers. And so just a couple of proof points that really speak to the value of leveraging digital and physical mediums. We know that there's value in a business leveraging multiple mediums. And we know specifically for small businesses that especially when a brick and mortar location is in play, that driving traffic from a geographic perspective and focusing on that local and community element of your business is critical to kind of generating interest and also generating sales. And so, really, there becomes an opportunity, if you're not doing it already, to test and see if the direct mail services actually can help you. So really, you want to make sure that you look at your customer's path to purchase, that it makes sense of the attributes that are important to them, that are really going to make it beneficial for you to kind of extract those elements and apply them to potential customers that are of the same vein. And so when you think about what those characteristics are, you want to also know about where they're interacting with you. So all of these pieces fit into the puzzle that we've been talking about when it not only comes to your brand and the messaging, but it really most importantly lies with who your customers are and who's most likely to buy from your business. So at this point, you want to be thinking about where your customer interactions are happening, what data are you collecting about these individuals, and what do you already know about them that you can actually bring forward and apply to some of your marketing campaigns. So you want to make sure that who your potential customer is really makes sense against who your current customer is. And this is really, the big difference between this is really about assumptions versus data. So when you think about your potential customers, odds are is that you're making those assumptions based on what you offer. And so who you think the type of individual that's most likely to purchase that sweater, and what characteristics they have from a demographics perspective. So in terms of age, um, education level, state of single, married, children, what are their pain points, and so what are some of the characteristics that are related to their current life stage, and also where are they located from a geographic perspective, and how does that come into play as well in terms of their inclination to feel that they relate to you and that they're likely to buy from you as well. Um, when you think about that potential customer, the great part is that you already have a great deal of data about your current customer in terms of outlining who your ideal customer is. And so when you compare the two, you actually start to narrow down and become much more granular on describing who the ideal customer for your product and or service and for your business overall really is. And so, what are those attributes that define that person? And what are the characteristics that then you can then apply to finding more people who look and operate and interact as they do? And understanding who is buying from you becomes critical in who you're going to be, who your right audience is for your brand and for your message. So, you want to make sure that you take a bit of time to really use the information that you have at your fingertips and define who that ideal customer is, because what will help you do is really make sure that you're precisely looking for the right people, that your investment from a marketing perspective is used in its most effective way, because you're not spending money on people who may or may not be inclined to purchase. If you use these kind of data points as a starting point for your targeting, you're actually starting a step ahead, because you have that information that they're likely to be more inclined because they look and feel and seem like your ideal customer who buys from you today. And then that's what really helps you establish your customer base and turn those individuals into loyal customers. And once you kind of start going through this pattern and this path, it really helps you define the difference between how you market and communicate to these different individuals, whether they're potential or whether they're a current customer or whether they're a growing customer. And the way then you can actually define those offers that we talked about and figure out the right time to communicate and how you adapt your message to them really becomes the way that you, at the end of the day, build the most effective marketing campaigns for your business that cater to different types of customers that you're actually supporting. And so, one of the best ways, like we said, to target customers is using key characteristics that define who they are. So, thinking about demographics, age and income, like we said, pain points, who are, individuals that are, um, potentially having different circumstances in their life and based on their stage of life, buying habits. So, when do they typically make purchases? When do you actually know that there's more of an interest to purchase than maybe not? Location is obviously critical. And like we said, especially when we think about those local shops and local communities and targeting those individuals, proximity to your business is a great starting point to actually get people in the door and get people to know about you. And then obviously interests. So as soon as something is going to be of interest to your existing customers, then individuals who may have those similar traits and interests themselves may find something in your business that will be beneficial to them. And so, really, you want to apply this level of thinking to who you're going after. And so, this way, you're not really targeting on mass, you're putting a little bit more of specific characteristics applied to your actual thinking. And another way of doing that, and really, which is a way to bridge the gap between digital and physical marketing is the postal code. So a lot of people are much more inclined to give their postal code either at a point of sale in store, or if there's an e-commerce store involved, you already have their postal code from a shipping perspective. And so the postal code really becomes interesting as a starting point for you to dive a little bit deeper and a little bit more specific into who the right people are. And so you can then target digital and social ads to individuals at the postal code level. And like we said, from an integrated perspective, follow up with a direct mail campaign that's also directly targeted and subsequently delivered at the postal code level. You start to narrow down the individuals and you start to become a bit more precise in the way that you're interacting and speaking to those people. And it really gives you the opportunity to customize and personalize the pieces of information that you share with them, and making sure that you're able to resonate with the right people. And then lastly, geography. So obviously, whether it's actually, you're dealing with a brick and mortar location or an online store, geography actually plays a role in both cases. So when you think about someone's willingness to travel to your store or purchase from you online, depending on the shipping requirements and the delivery windows, these are all things that buyers take into consideration when they're making a decision to purchase. So you want to make sure that depending, and it's all dependent on what your services are, your products are, is, targeting by neighborhood is a really simple way of getting that local traffic in, like we said. Postal code is really about taking a neighborhood and making it a bit more specific, and you can get a bit more granular on those lifestyle traits and demographics, and applying those elements to your marketing campaign. And then at the address level, then you're actually talking one-on-one and individual to individual. And this is where there's really value in, from a loyalty perspective, that you can actually single out and know that what you're saying specifically to those people resonates and is relatable, and they're going to, likelihood of responding is quite high because there's that established relationship, and it really gives you the chance to take it one step further with them. And then, you have a kind of a snapshot of how you progress from your targeting perspective and how you use and complement your digital and physical activities to really make sure that from an awareness, acquisition, and loyalty perspective, you're leveraging these pieces to its fullest potential. So you're taking into account the way in which you're interacting And so if it's on a larger scale, you're thinking that you just want people to be aware of your business, you want to give them a good footing and understanding of who you are. When you're looking at actually acquiring them, you want to use that data that you know about your businesses and take that into consideration when you're building either an email campaign or using IP addresses to target through either Facebook or Google. And then from a loyalty perspective, like we said, that one-to-one relationship becomes critical. And the way in which you interact with them means that they're there for the long run, and that means special offers, that means personalization in your communications to them, and really taking it one step further. That demonstrates to the recipient that you're as committed in kind of that business interaction with them, and they'll kind of continue to be committed to your business as well. And I think from, when you talk about the current state, the best thing that you can do is really work hard at establishing and nurturing these relationships with your customers. And so you really want to make sure that as you progress with them on their journey, that you're kind of taking them along on yours. And so this is where talking about who you are, sharing that as part of your communication really starts to progress along this path of them just kind of having an idea of who you are, them being interested and willing to actually purchase from you, and then subsequently them being dedicated to your business. And the difference between each of these objectives really makes you line up your marketing objectives against them as well. And so you may not do as large of a campaign from a loyalty perspective, because maybe you're just building your customer base. And so you spend a bit more time on awareness and acquisition. But then as you get a little bit further down the road, you actually realize that, communicating and kind of serving that loyal customer base as well becomes just as important to make sure that they continue and that they continue to grow. And they become part of, that ideal customer base that we talked about. But it's really about taking the baby steps to get there, and taking those kind of incremental pieces into perspective and making sure that you can weave together a really great story. And so we really, at the end of all of this, want positives to come out of this as much as we possibly can. And so it's really about how do you provide a bit of consistency to your customers when they're in a midst of uncertain times as well, and they're cognizant also that you're going through uncertain times. So how do you go that extra mile and really commit to them and show that your brand is committed to them in the long term? Hear back from them as you've been interacting with them over the past few months. This is where you can actually take some of those learnings and use that to your kind of advantage as you go through and build campaigns and build narratives that define your business, because you've actually heard firsthand, either through customer service or through social media, what they're saying. And then lastly, knowing who your customers are and letting them know who you are is, like we said, is critical. So knowing who they are is really about making sure that you're serving them the right content in the right formats, and you're offering up products that you know are going to be of value to them. And coupling that with sharing about your business and making sure that they know about your progression and also what you bring to the table allows you to really inspire loyalty and make sure that trust is established between you and your customer, and that at the end of the day, with a quality product and your good customer service, really allows you to just get into a really good rhythm of supporting your customers and having them support you as you continue to adapt and progress through the next phase of the pandemic. And I think people have demonstrated, in spades, how they're looking to support local small businesses. So it really becomes an opportunity for you to bring them along with you as you adapt into this new business as usual model, really. And we're here to help support as well. And so today was really meant to give you an understanding of how you take some of the things that may have been trying over the past little while and turn that into positives for your brand and for your campaigns and subsequently for your customers. And the resources that we have available to you can be found on canadapost.ca/small business resources, and also information about our direct mail discounts and getting familiar with direct mail as well if you're not today. And we also have a Think Small program that we've been advocating for the past few months now, really providing small businesses with the right tools and resources and savings on our services that really can help them get back in business and get back in market. So until August 31st, there's an opportunity to take advantage of a campaign of up to 6,000 pieces where we cover the cost of postage, and you can work with one of our partners and you just cover the cost of print and production. And more information can be found about that on canadapost.ca/thinksmall. And we also have an ongoing offer until the end of October of where you can save 15% on any of our neighborhood mail, direct mail services until the end of October, like I said, but really on subsequent campaigns. So we really, we know you have a long road ahead, but we're here to work with you along that journey and make sure that together we kind of adjust and adapt and make sure we set you up for success so that you can adapt to this new landscape that we're all in.
I've got a couple of questions in the queue, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to take a couple of questions for our participants.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the first one is we are looking to send packages to attendees for an upcoming event. How far in advance is the best time to send these packages? And they're being sent across the country.
So great question. So I think and probably a question that's on everyone's mind who's shipping something. So we would recommend, so depending on where you're shipping them from and where they're destined to, best is to go to the website on canadapost.ca, and you can find the delivery standards for our services, for our shipping and our parcel services. What I would say is we obviously have had a significant increase in volume across our network over the past few months, and volume like we typically only see at Christmas. And so I would say I would plan ahead, and I would make sure to give yourself a bit of buffer, especially if these are related to an event and you want to make sure that people have them prior to. And so really make sure that you add, depending on the origin destination, again, of where it's going, give yourself a couple of days of buffer and tack that on to when you actually drop them off at a post office or what have you, just to make sure that you give yourself enough time for us to deliver it.
Great, thank you for that. Another question is, so you talked about having a marketing mix and having your different channels kind of connect up. If you've got someone who has a great online presence, but and has a storefront, but they want to get their marketing mix into a direct mail campaign, what is a great way of doing that? Like, just for somebody who's just completely starting out, they've been online, they've got their storefront, but they've never done a direct mail campaign. What's a good starting point?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think the best way to kind of get started is to figure out where you want to target. So, and what the intent of the mail piece is. So if, for example, it's to drive traffic to the physical location, then we have online tools that actually can help you map out and give you a look at what coverage looks like from a delivery perspective. And so you can say, if we use an example of your 123 Main Street, and you believe that people would be willing to drive about 5 kilometers to get your sweaters. So then we can help you with the tools that we have, and also actually our partner network can help you and kind of walk you through the process to help you identify the best way to define your targeting area. And then if you know things about your customers, then we can also apply some of those demographic characteristics to your mailing, which will make it a bit more precise. And so kind of having a lay of the land of where you want to deliver to, or kind of who you want to reach is probably a better way to say it, is a great starting point. And on the flip side, if the intent is to kind of drive to the website, then it's really about figuring out the best way to do that. So is there a connection between the brick and mortar store and people who shop there, and you want to start driving them online? And if so, can you leverage some of that data that you know about the people who are coming in person, to apply it to a campaign that would drive to the digital experience? And so I would say that basically we could say, well, you could start with an offer, you could start with creative, but I think the safest way to kind of start is what's your objective, who do you want to target, and then how do you want to target them?